This is Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk TNT.
I have a wordy question for you to begin with. I watched you on the Neil Oliver show the other day on GB News, and I was not surprised to see the old tropes being pulled out of the bag to undermine your argument by meteorologist Jim Dale, who claimed the idea of chemtrails was akin to theories of aliens, flat earth, and green cheese. Do you think Mr. Dale is aware of the hundreds of recorded experiments by the Ministry of Defence where they sprayed carcinogens such as zinc cadmium sulfide over the British population and then recorded how many people were admitted to hospital? Or was Mr. Dale being totally disingenuous and perhaps working for the other side?
I can answer that. I'm going to be verbose if you don't mind as well, Johnny, because what we discovered was that zinc cadmium sulfide actually creates a net, like a little box, and the two elements, zinc sulfide and cadmium sulfide, normally float around on their own. They're kind of produced as single compounds, but these two are joined together. They're not inhalable. You can't inhale them at all. They're far too large to go through the lung membrane. So even if they did spray it, which I suspect is very likely because the chemical that we think we're being regularly treated with by hostile forces is attracted to a double sulfur. And by joining those two compounds together, you get a double sulfur. And that will contain the toxin. In theory, that's the theory. But I'm sure that Jim Dale does know about those experiments, and I'm sure that he must know about ice nuclei. Well, I would hope he would anyway.
Yeah, indeed. I felt angry watching that interview, to be honest. I have to say, how often do you get painted as a conspiracy theorist when talking about provable facts then?
A lot. A lot. There was a huge pile-on by the time I came off. There were hundreds of people kind of lining up ready to call me a Looney Tune. We blocked a lot of them because, to be honest, all they do is get in the way of serious research and to reaching the people who need to know. And for us, our main objective is to tell people what they need to know so they can protect themselves from adverse conditions, anything that is going to harm them.
Yeah, indeed. Jim Dale seemed to also question why people would think that this sort of manipulation is happening without considering that our government has a rich history in human experimentation that goes back at least 100 years. We know probably more, but chemical-wise, definitely 100 years.
I can tell you there are probably other countries that have done far more, Johnny. The research that we've done goes back to 1400s, and I know that you know this period very, very well yourself. We looked at the Germanic central states and Prussia, and we know that they started their experiments back in the 1400s in the mines that the Fugger bankers had, and they were way ahead of us. We really were lagging so far behind when it came to World War I that we needed to catch up in order to be able to mitigate anything that they threw at us. And they've thrown a lot at us, a lot, and they're still doing it. So, you know, I kind of feel that we can get upset about experiments done to see which way the wind blows a cloud. And I suspect also, because I believe zinc cadmium sulfide was also used in America, but that was used across about 15, 16 sites, and it was also used over military bases. And I suspect that this was actually a live exercise to try and mitigate effects of an attack. So as far back as that, you know, here in London, we had the Great Smog, we had the Linford flood, all in the same year. That's not a coincidence, that's an attack, Johnny. So we have to bear in mind that whatever we are doing in the sky, and they say, oh yeah, it was an experiment. It's like our exercises. They're not exercises, they're live exercises. And that's a big difference. It's a big difference. We're in a war, and we have been for a very long time. It kind of has had peaks and troughs, but at the moment, we're really digging in right down into the depths. And I mean, pardon the pun, we know that a lot of this is going on underground. And what we've discovered is that at the beginning of COVID, which is, let's say, they kind of blew the starter's whistle, as it were, for the public disclosure. This has all been about learning. It's a learning process for all of us. What is real? What isn't real? And as we've been watching what's been going on in the sky, we discovered all these apps that show us what's going on underground, and we matched that with stories, live stories about fires and substations being blown up and floods and hundreds of different things, or thousands actually, and reports of gunfire in the middle of the night, Johnny. So I don't know whether you heard, last night we had a huge storm in the south of the UK that tracked in from France. It actually tracked in from Germany and France. I've been locating certain what we call pinpoint plumes where we suspected that lightning is being made from. And this happens again and again and again. It happened in Oklahoma the other day. So we look for these pinpoint plumes, and that to us, if you did a microplastics test, you would find them right there.
This is Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk TNT.